This is episode number 217. Hard to believe we've done that many. With Deborah Hughes, Kevin McPherson, and Lori McNee.
This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhodes, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called plein air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it plein air. Others say plein air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhodes.
Thank you, Jim Kipping, and welcome to the Plein Air Podcast. As he said, I'm Eric Rhodes, and I hope you're getting out to paint. And if you haven't tried it, I hope you will try it. If you paint in the studio, that's great. I do that too. But painting from photographs is not the same. And you got to get outside and try it. It's so invigorating because you're outdoors, you're in nature. Sometimes you're with friends. This weekend, I'm going to go painting with friends. The great Albert Handel, one of the greatest artists, been painting for 60 years. He's coming over to the place. We're going to go paint trees. And I'm really excited about that because I'm sure I'll get some tips and some pointers and some ideas and some other things. I should mention that this podcast now has over 1.5 million downloads. Pretty significant. And it's being heard in over 90 countries. So that's pretty cool. And obviously the plein air movement is hot. It's really been hot about the last 10, 12 years or so. And about the time we founded Plein Air Magazine. Any coincidence? I don't know, maybe. Anyway, we are honored also that the Plein Air Podcast has been rated the number one in FeedSpot's 2021 Top 15 Painting Podcast list. Number one. That's nice. You can subscribe wherever you get podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe and listen to this. If you're a first timer, welcome. Thank you so much. Coming up today, after today's interview, and every Plein Air podcast, I do the Art Marketing Minute. I try to solve problems. I teach art marketing on stage at the Plein Air convention every year. I have a series of videos at painttube.tv, but I try to answer your marketing questions. I also have a separate podcast with those answers called the Art Marketing Podcast. So you can look it up if you don't want to listen to this whole thing or wait till the end. I am getting very excited because if you're listening to this when it just first comes out, next Wednesday, the 9th of March is when Plein Air Live begins. And I am the host, and I love Plein Air Live. It is just an amazing online art conference. And we have some of the top artists in the world doing demonstrations and talks, mostly demonstrations. And we have a worldwide audience from over 30 countries, but also instructors from all over the world. For instance, Danielle Estoni is from the Florence Academy in Italy, and she's a great plein air painter. She's going to teach two top artists from New Zealand, world-renowned painter John Crump, as well as Richard Robinson, plus many, many, many others, about 30 people teaching landscape painting and outdoor painting, plein air painting. And of course, plein air does require some different disciplines and some different skills, and they help you meet the challenge of seeing light and color differently outdoors. So you want to check that out. Just go to pleinairlive.com. Now, if you're new to plein air painting or collecting, I want to tell you that we have an incredible magazine. We're celebrating 10 years. It's actually more than 10 because we started, we were out for 2 or 3 years and we stopped because nobody was doing plein air and we couldn't get any money out of anybody. And what I mean by that is advertisers. We had plenty of subscribers, but we didn't have any advertising because the advertisers were telling us, nobody does plein air painting. Galleries were saying, we don't carry plein air paintings. And I'm saying, yeah, but all paintings out, landscape paintings oftentimes start with plein air. They didn't buy it. And then, the art materials people said, well, no, but there's not enough plein air painters to support for art materials. Well, that's all changed. Now we have a giant expo hall of art materials people at the plein air convention. The galleries are selling plein air paintings like crazy. So it's all different. Anyway, Plein Air Magazine is a terrific thing that you might want to consider subscribing to. You can join tens of thousands of artists and collectors who are part of the plein air movement. It's rooted in the deep history of plein air painting, which goes way back even beyond Monet and all those folks. And it's bi-monthly. It's edited by the great Kelly Kane, and it chronicles important events and spotlights today's masters, techniques, and the collectors who follow them, as well as the historic artists who come before them. Comes out every other month. And the digital edition, if you want that, you can get that only, which is really handy for people overseas. But the digital edition has about 30% extra content, which is not in the print because print costs money to print, right? So anyway, we hope that you'll subscribe. Just go to pleinairmagazine.com. And also you can find it at Barnes & Noble stores. And we are honored. I don't know what it's happened after COVID because I haven't heard the numbers, but pre-COVID for the last 2, 3, 4 years, we've been the number one selling art magazine in America at Barnes & Noble stores. Yay, that's pretty exciting. So make sure you go there and get it. You can also get it at most Michael's stores. And if you don't see it there, they're either sold out or just ask the management to get it so you can get it. But just subscribe at pleinairmagazine.com. That's the easiest thing to do. Now, speaking of plein air, one of the things that will elevate you faster than anything else, other than training, is to put yourself into the game, to put yourself into art competitions, because the minute you do that, you think differently. Like I entered an art competition a few years ago. I had never done it before. Not ours. I can't enter ours. Anyway, the thing that happened is I started to enter the painting. I photographed it and I looked at it and I thought, is it going to live up to the other things? Is it good enough? And so I kept working on it till I felt it was good enough. What that did is it pushed me forward. And when you're competing with other people, it pushes you forward. Well, the Plein Air Salon is a terrific art competition, and it's not all plein air because not all plein air artists are only plein air. I mean, a lot of us paint plein air, a lot of us paint studio. Some of us paint figures and portraits and still life and other things. So we include it all in there. You can win. And we have $33,000 in all cash prizes. That's all cash. Now, a lot of competitions say they have all this value, but they make up value for things. This is all cash. And so $15,000 grand prize, and you'll get to get it presented on the big stage if you win. And a lot of really incredible artists that were unknowns have won this and become knowns. And so you get to hold your big check up on stage, and you also are going to get the cover of Plein Air magazine, which is really cool. We are adding for next year, we're adding a lot of new recognition prizes, mentions and newsletters and profiles and things like that. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, if you want to get yours in, you want to do it soon because the annual competition is about over. The way this works is we have 17 categories. And if you win in any of the 17 categories, and you can even get a first or second or third place prize, and there's cash prizes for those. But if you win in any of the categories, you get automatically entered into the national competition, which is coming up. We're going to end this soon and have the judging happen so we can present it at the Plein Air Convention in May. So make sure you get your entries in, get your best work. You're allowed to repeat works. We have people enter the same thing month after month, and sometimes one judge doesn't like it, the other one does. And once you win, you're in the winning for that painting for the national competition. And you can enter as many paintings as you want, of course. Anyway, that is Plein Air Salon. Get your entry in by March 31st. And just go to pleinairsalon.com. All right. So last week I did a webinar. I've been getting a lot of questions because of all the things we did because of COVID, because of my daily 12 noon show that I do called Art School Live on Facebook and YouTube. We've had, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people that we've been exposed to, and a lot more people are coming into painting and plein air painting. And I've been getting a lot of questions from people about plein air painting, and I try to answer them, but I thought it'd be cool to do a webinar. So I asked Kevin McPherson, who is one of the great masters, author of one of the most popular plein air books. I asked Deborah Hughes and Lori McNee, very, very deeply, richly experienced painters, if they would come onto a webinar and just answer a lot of questions about not doing demos, but just answering questions about, how to pack your paints and how to travel with paints, and just little tips and techniques. And we had 5,000, probably over 5,000, actually. I think it was 5,200 who signed up for the webinar. We were really honored by that. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, I'm going to play a replay of that for you here. Now, I've had this edited up a little bit because there were a couple things in there. I talked about some offers, for instance, for Plein Air Live, which have since expired, and so I can't put those out there. So if it's a little choppy in a couple places, understand that that's what's going on. Anyway, let's watch that and listen to that right now. We have a terrific night for you tonight. The reason I did this is because we have, first off, because of all the things we've been doing during COVID, like the 12 noon daily broadcasts on Facebook, et cetera, we have brought thousands of new people into the fold, and a lot of people are learning about plein air painting for the first time and want to learn how to do it, want to become part of it. Others have been studio painters, but want to get outside and studio and plein air paint. And then others just want to get to the next level. So we're going to be touching on all these things. And we have kind of an agenda we'll go through. We're going to talk about, things that you can do to learn plein air painting, how to grow as a painter, how to start out. And then also, we're going to get, how do you get to the next level? We're going to talk about all the little things. There's no demos here tonight, but all the little things that you need to know that will help you, that took me 5 or 6 years to learn, and probably others that much time. And then we're going to top it off with travel tips, because people have a lot of questions about traveling with paint. How do you do it? So we'll get into all of that. Now we have everybody unmuted and their mics on and ready to go. We have a terrific panel tonight. I don't know where to start, but Lori McNee, hello.
Hi, how are you? Whoops.
I'm well. Where are you?
Where am I? I am in southern Idaho near the Snake River Canyon, along the Snake River on my family farm. I've become a homestead. Is that what it's called? Well, I'm a farmer, homesteading, and
I always thought you were a farmer.
Yeah, and I'm having a really good time while I'm building my new house, which is going to take another year. So I will be living at the farm, but I'm enjoying this rural lifestyle.
So my big favorite show is Yellowstone, and I just imagine myself running around on a horse with a sidearm and shooting bandits. So what are you doing that? Are you walking around with a pistol and a horse?
I do have a pistol, but I'm herding goats and chickens, and well, horses are on the to-do list. I grew up with them, but we don't have any right now, but we do have goats and chickens.
Well, maybe there's a horse farmer who can send you a couple tonight. Next, we have Deborah Hughes. Deborah, welcome.
Hello, welcome.
And Deborah, you're where?
I'm in Southern California at the Hughes Skelly Gallery. It's a beautiful location. It's really beautiful out today, and I'm really happy to be here.
San Diego. Oh, you're not in San Diego. You're in.
No, we're near Newport Beach.
Newport Beach. Okay, terrific. Yeah. Well, Deborah is a fabulous painter. Just has released a couple of new videos with us. I should mention that Lori has with us as well. Well, welcome, Kevin McPherson. I'm already jealous because it looks to me like you got some pretty good paintings behind you there.
Hello, Eric, and thanks for having me. Yeah, I got a couple good ones. I have some of mine, and then I have some good ones behind me too.
Well, tell us about that sailboat. It looks pretty yummy.
Oh, that's an Egger pane. I that long ago, and it's a beautiful treasure, and a little Feshin drawing, which I think Feshin's one of the best draftsmen ever in the world, and so I'm proud to have that too. And then a couple of my old dredges behind me too.
Well, you've got some great paintings, and I will step aside. That painting right there That one is a Kevin McPherson. So I'm very honored to have that here in my Plein Air podcast studio. Well, let's get the ball rolling here and we'll have some fun tonight. I want to start out with the idea of learning. If somebody, and anybody can take this, but if somebody comes up to you and says, listen, I've never plein air painted before. I've never even painted before. What should I do? Where do I start? Does anybody want to take that one? Go.
Sure. I'll start. I think the best place to start is to find someone that you admire, that loves to teach, that can speak to you and give you the inside information, you know, help you get set up, help you learn about your gear, help you learn how to, you know, think about the big ideas for painting. So I would say that would be the first thing I'd want to do.
So how do you know?
Can I jump in on that?
Yes, please do.
I just want to say that I started plein air painting over 20 years ago after I read Kevin's book, and it inspired me so much. And he challenged in the book for us to paint little 6x8 paintings. And one summer when I was really busy with my kids and they were at soccer and things like that, I really had no time to paint. But I decided to take a small little kit with me, and I ended up during that summer painting 100 little 6x8s, Kevin.
Wow, nice.
And I had a friend see them and she fell in love with them, and she had a little consignment store that was it was upper end, and she said, I want to hang these on the wall. And so I ended up selling them all, and my gallery that I have been with now for over 20 years discovered me there. And so it just, so thank you, Kevin. I just want to say I'm a big fan, and thank you for that. And I love your book, and it's timeless. So you all might enjoy. What's the name of the book? Something light. What is it, Kevin?
Fill your light with, what was it called?
Fill your paintings.
Fill your paintings with light and color.
There it is.
Yeah.
But
okay.
So you must have written that when you were like 12, right?
I did. Actually, I would add to what they both said, and I appreciate that, Lori.
Sure.
One of the about painting small and doing that, you know, that's a great way to start and build your collectors also, which I did similarly way back. But I love getting an artist or a person who has never painted in their life because they have no bad habits. And, you know, you get someone who at university for 4 years, it takes a lot of untraining to get them to really understand. So I love to get someone to learn how to paint by not picking up a brush. I guarantee I could walk around with you for 4 days and teach you how to paint, because it's basically teaching you how to see as an artist, see two-dimensionally, you know, the 3 dimensions that we're trying to transform. So it is fun to just walk around with someone and teach them to see the way an artist needs to see. So that's how I recommend someone who's never done it before. And I guarantee if you don't have the bad habits and you have someone, as both Deb and Lori mentioned, someone you respect and someone who's a good communicator, you can get going in the right path very quickly.
So you came up with this idea of the 100 paintings, doing 100 quick paintings. Was that from you, or did somebody tell you that and you put it in your book and claim credit?
Yeah. Actually, what I did, I started, one of my first shows was 100 paintings that I painted from my travels around the world, 6x8 paintings. And that was one of my first shows. And then I did it every other year for about 5 years. And that's where my growth, I think, really happened by painting small and painting a different scene every day or every time you go do it, as opposed to trying to do a large painting and have problems that you just beat a dead horse over and over. Every day is kind of a new, fresh start. And I think that's where you grow the most. When
I discovered my first plein air painter, it was a guy by the name of Kevin Corder. I didn't know anything about plein air painting. I was a studio painter and not a very good one. And Kevin said, paint 100 small paintings. And he said, limit yourself to 30 minutes per painting.
Oh,
what do you think about that?
That's a good tip. I agree. personally. I start ruining my painting much after that. I think starts are, we learn the most from just starting a painting, and they're so fresh. And so I love that stage where you don't start to ruin them. They turn into Frisbees.
Yeah,
Well,
I'd like to join in on that, because 6x8, when I used to work in pastel for many years, and I started doing the oil and going outdoors, and I was in workshops or painting on my own, and they were bigger, little bigger size, even 11x14 was so overwhelming. So once I figured out to start, probably from Kevin's book, figured out to go to a 6x8 size, all I had to tell myself was, Deborah, just get the sky, the landmass, the water, or whatever, and get your values correct, and then build from there. Forget about all the extra details and information, and it makes a huge difference.
I think that a lot of us, when we start painting, at least this was the case for me, to me, the idea of doing a good painting was doing something that was photographic, very, very tight. And I was holding my brush, right up close, like I held a pencil. And that exercise of the 100 paintings, because he said, hold your brush at the back of the brush, just do big gestural strokes,
Yeah.
try to get that canvas done in 30 minutes. And the minute the alarm goes off, just stop it. And I think it was a good exercise in just, trying to not be so tight, because you can't be tight when you've got 30 minutes. I don't think.
That's right. Or kids playing soccer on the field while you're trying to paint. So that's the kind of what happened to me too, as well. I was a studio painter for years prior to learning how to plein air paint. And I was so tired of working from photographs that I started painting still life. And then from there, plein air painting, and it's really helped my studio work. And maybe I'm jumping subjects already, but it's such a wonderful discipline, whether you're a studio painter or you just want to focus on painting in plein air.
So I hear a lot of people say, and I say oftentimes, if you've been painting from photographs your whole life and you're in the studio all the time, when you go outside, your paintings change. How do they change?
I could answer that.
Okay.
I figured you could.
Sure. I think, the word plein air, obviously, it more reflects a painting from life. So whether we're painting a portrait, a landscape, a still life from life, it's a direct interpretation of our subject. Like there's nothing in between us and the subject except air. And that's really what I paint, is the air between me and the subject. But, when we have a photograph, and back in the old days when we had to get the film and stuff, we'd be so excited. We'd take photographs, we get back from our trips, and very disappointed when we finally look at them. That the exposures aren't so good, but there's no feeling. So there's a real direct conversation with our subject when we're painting from life. So I think we definitely see color in a different way. We react to what we're looking at in a different way. And so I highly recommend, you could advance quicker, perhaps in your mind, by working from photographs, because it's already two-dimensionally and it's stagnant there. But I definitely know that you will advance in a bigger way if you go through the struggles of painting from life. So definitely you will see colors different, you'll interpret your emotions differently from the photograph, and you'll have a real direct relationship with your subject.
Well, and you'll see light differently. You'll see shape and form differently, because you're just out there. You can't get the brilliance of color from a photograph typically, even with digital, that you're seeing in person. So Deborah Hughes, you mentioned, or somebody mentioned, values and big shapes. Let's take them one at a time. Who wants to talk about values?
I will.
Okay.
Let me start with that value. The saying is that color gets all of the compliments and value does all the work. And that's really important. No one wants to study value because it sounds so boring, because they want to get to the.
Can I just stop you there? I'm sorry. There are people watching this who don't know what the word values means in this
good
context.
Idea. Sure.
That's the painting, is it not?
It's the what?
Price of the painting we sell it
Yeah,
for?
the value of the painting. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, so you have to be able to see the light values, the middle values, and the dark values. And the reason is because the sun is out there, whether it's a photograph or you're on location, it is hitting a subject, it's creating a shadow, and it's creating form. So value are the different tones that create form in a shape. And so you have to be able to learn how to see. For instance, when I paint a harbor scene, I'm always trying to decide, and I stand there, I talk to myself, and I go, so, you know, is the sky darker than the water? Is the landmass almost as dark as the water, or is it lighter or darker? And so that lighter, darker thing about value is so important. If you don't pay attention to that, you don't have the darks and the lights to give you form, then your paintings, you've heard the term flat, that's what happens. You start to paint things and colors and you're not paying attention to the value, and so you're not getting any form. So it's very important to learn about value.
Anybody else on value?
Well, I like to think of value like notes on a piano scale, darker notes and higher notes, and it translates into painting too. And I think that the more sophisticated I become as a painter, the more I appreciate value and trying to have fewer values in a painting. I like to challenge myself to that. And I would say 3 to 4 values really make a more cohesive painting, and also varying the shapes of these values. So that's the way I like to use value. And there's a good book, another good book, John F. Carlson's book of landscape painting. And that's kind of another Bible for plein air painters or landscape painters. And he breaks down value in a scientific way. And it's really helpful. And there are always rules to be broken in art. There are. And so, you know, when it's snowing and the snow is white on the ground, it might be lighter than the sky, but usually the sky is the lightest value because it's the source of light. But in that book, he explains that. And I see some of you have that book, and I love the book. So I would suggest that too.
Gavin, any thoughts on value?
Yeah, I think about the values as, you know, if we had a black and white TV when we were kids, you know, and then we got color, and then we had the TV where you could actually turn the dial and have it from black and white to color. So as Deb said, you know, the real strength of a painting is in the value control, you know, and the color could be, as long as the values are correct, the color could be anything, and you can get away with it. When I approach painting outside to make it the most simple way to do it, I look at all the values that are out in front of me, and I break it down into 2 shapes, the family of light and the family of shadow. Within those 2 families, you may have 2 or 3 values in each side of it, 1 or 2, but that's the most simple way you can kind of break the code of the complexity, the chaos of nature. You know, first break it down into 2 families, light and shadow, and then how many values are in there. But so just think about the black and white TV, you know, you just change the color, you know, get rid of it, and that's the strength of the painting. And
is there anybody in the comments that has never seen a black and white TV? I'd be curious about that. I'm sure there are. We have, by the way, we have viewers from all over the world. I just saw Australia, Switzerland, Singapore, UK, Sydney, Australia, and New South Wales in Australia, and Costa Rica. So thank you all for tuning in. Cool. Hello, world. Tunisia, Tasmania. Okay, so one of the things that I'm curious about, I think that color complicates everything. And I believe, I'm not sure I used to believe this, but I believe it now. First off, I think somebody should learn to paint in the indoors before they ever paint outdoors, just because, you know, learning to mix colors, you know, red and blue and so on. But I think that the first thing that everybody should do is painting a value painting or two. What do you think about that? Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I love
What-
that as an exercise. And in fact, when I teach plein air painting around the world, which I love to do so much, and people are so enthusiastic to get out there and start painting with this array of beautiful colors. It's like being a kid in a candy store and seeing all these beautiful tubes of paint. But I do exactly what you're saying, Eric, where the first day we paint a painting in value. And so they pick 2 tubes of paint that they can mix black and white, a form of black and white, and do a value painting. But it serves, at least for my students, it seems to do really well by them. And then it helps them understand how to mix. And then we use a limited palette. Again, I know Kevin suggests that in his lovely book. And that helps so people don't create too much mud.
Anybody else want to touch on values?
Well, another idea is to do the no-tan. So no-tan is a term for a value drawing. I like to get maybe some little squares in your sketchbook that are similar to the 6x8 size, for instance. And when you're on location, you're not only working out the design, which is super important, we'll get to that, but you have to work out the value. So where's my darkest dark, and where's my sun, and where's my shadow, like Kevin was saying. So with the colored, or not colored markers, grays, get maybe 3 or 4 max, and then just leave the white paper and use the black and get a couple middle values and get your values for shadow and your values for sunlight. And I think that's very helpful. Simple.
You all do sketches or no-tans before you paint?
Well,
I oftentimes I do.
What'd you say? Well, I didn't hear you, Kevin.
I kind of disagree on some of that.
That's okay. You're allowed.
All that I think is helpful. And it's interesting. Black and white is actually man's invention, probably 1847. Before that, nobody ever thought in black and white except some dogs, perhaps.
Well, but Rembrandt was painting brown paintings.
So
it's brown and white.
Yeah. No, but we see in color, but we have to transfer it into values. We have to make those decisions. I actually use the term value, because it's value and color together. We're always making those comparisons. What color is it and what value is it? Lighter, darker, warmer, cooler. And so I don't necessarily think to start out in black and white is necessarily the best way to do it. However, if you don't understand the values, how light the red is, how dark it is compared to something else, you're going to get yourself in trouble. But I do think starting out with color, for one, it's more exciting.
True.
And I think you're going to kind of keep the student enthused. I see so many painters. I travel all around the world too, and work with students, from all different places. And some get so good at drawing the cast, for instance, in black and white for 2 years. Some programs use that, and it sucks out all the joy in that person by the time they understand what they're doing. And I'm amazed after they do that, they don't know how to separate light and shadow. They've been studying for 2 years, but they missed the concept. So I think color is important. And I think, color by itself means nothing. We also see advertisements of people saying, I'm a colorist. And basically they're just saying, I know nothing about value. So it's kind of.
I have a friend who was an art student, and her first lesson or two, they were painting grayscale cones and cubes. And she said she was so bored. I mean, I think that's like saying, you go to a piano lesson and you start having to play scales, you need to play a song right away. And so that's where color comes in. So I don't disagree with you there. I think the idea is get them enthusiastic, keep them interested. All right. So big shapes.
Big shapes are so important. That's the thing. Get in the big shapes. And that sounds simple, except for when I work at the harbor again, little 6x8, if I can just get my sky, my distant landmass, my water, I've already figured out, I've covered the entire canvas almost. And I've also figured out a color tone, a value setup, and a design setup. So those big shapes are most important. And people, tend to go for the details first. They want to do all this little knit, knack, paddywhack, and you can't do that. You have to get your big shapes. You know what? It makes things so much easier, and it's fun, and it simplifies the whole process.
Anybody else want to touch on that?
Yeah, I agree.
I totally agree.
Go ahead, Lori.
Oh, I just was saying, I agree. Definitely.
Yeah, I think the big shapes, if you think of looking at your scene and saying, name that tune. Remember the music game they used to do. How many shapes can we make our painting into? Like, oh, it looks so chaotic, but say, well, I can name that painting in 10 shapes. And then Deb says, well, I can name it in 8 shapes. And then Lori says, I can do it in 6 shapes. And then we'll both say, okay, you do that. But what that does simplifies what we're looking at into the most important things. And also, as Deb said, the detail, which most people want to do first, is really the last thing we need to consider.
And you really don't want to do detail. You just want to suggest, like I steal from C.W. Mundy, knick-knack, paddywhack. Just suggest little things after you get the big shapes in.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next section, which is how do I grow? I already know how to paint. You've already given us all some good basic things to do as beginners. We'll talk about some other things like equipment and travel and stuff in a minute. But how do I grow to the next level? What does it take? Some people get to a place where they're comfortable and they're cool with that, and others are frustrated because they're not growing. Do you have any tips on growth?
Just get out there and do it, and I just think getting some miles of canvas behind you and, again, challenging yourself to get out and paint as often as you can. And again, if it sounds ominous, paint small and don't put too much pressure on yourself. And, that's the thing with social media. We compare a lot, and maybe get off social media for a little bit while you're learning, and try not to compare yourself as much unless you're inspired by it. If it depresses you, don't look. But just get out there and try, and you'll keep growing. Every time you'll learn something.
Great line in the comments from Annie McWard. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Ooh, I like that too.
Me too.
Okay, so what about growth? Deborah?
I would say to try to stretch yourself, try some new things. And one fun thing is to deconstruct your painting. So get in all your big shapes, get in what you think looks pretty good, and then take your brush, maybe don't look at it, or maybe just, just a little bit of boom, boom, boom. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, that looks really great. And what did I just do? So there's some fun, simple things like that you can try as far as deconstruction. Try putting a lot of paint on there, try palette knife, and maybe even try finding a painter that you like what they're doing, and why are they doing something a little differently than I am, and how can I try to push myself a little closer to that goal. So
I was painting in my studio the other day, and I have this painting I've been working on, and it's just, I hate it, right? And I just can't make it right. And I had a frustrated moment, and I was fighting a couple of different focal points, and I thought, I just got some gray and just covered 90% of the painting and then wiped that gray off. And all of a sudden the painting was perfect because it pushed something back. It changed the focal point. It, deconstructed it. And it was a wonderful lesson.
Yeah. That's
Kevin?
really fun to do.
One thing I've learned, that nothing is precious. And sometimes we have to take out something. You might just love the way you painted this tree, but it's better without it. And you might have to just wipe it out. And that's kind of part of the growing experience too, is deleting, knowing when to edit and delete and simplify and design, all of that. And it's an ongoing, never-ending learning experience.
What percentage of your paintings are failures?
Are you asking me, Eric?
Everybody, I'm just curious.
Okay. Failure. I'm having a better ratio lately. I'm grateful. But I definitely, like I said earlier, I do paint Frisbees sometimes. So I don't know. I haven't thought of the ratio.
Deborah, what about you?
Well, I would say, you know, that's really personal because you might think it's fabulous and someone else might think it's terrible. So, you know, sometimes you paint a duck, they say, you know, and you get out there, you lose your dark. So that's something that's really important. If you don't get your dark
question.
It's
a trick question.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the trick question is you're going to learn from every painting, whether it's good or not.
It's true.
Yeah, Eric, I think that question about the failures and the growth is similar, connected. When I was thinking about the growth problem, I'd say my failure rate is about 50%.
Wow.
And when you were talking about growth, I remember in one paint event years ago, we were up in the mountains and painting with a lot of terrific artists. And every day we'd come back and one of the artists had great paintings every time. But they were, let's call them a number 8 out of a 10. You know, he got a 7 and 8, but he never pushed himself far enough to get a failure sometimes. So he always played it safe. And, you know, the paintings were good, but they never gave me the goosebumps. And then there's some of the other artists that we were in, you know, did a terrible one and then a great one. You know, they're pushing to do something different. So I think we always have to find, for growth, every time I start a painting, I may start with a different limited palette, for instance. You know, so it challenges me to struggle in a different way. I may approach the painting with a concept in my mind so that my success was not necessarily a great painting, but did I solve that problem I was trying to do in that particular instance? So if we give ourselves a little bit of an assignment with every painting, I think that will help us grow instead of just going out there. So let yourself fail. Don't worry about the failures, and you'll get these things. Sometimes it only happens once a year. You get this wonderful painting that you almost feel like is the out of body experience. You say, did I do that? You don't even know how you did it because all the things you practice and then the intuitive feelings all come together for that one moment. And it doesn't happen often. So the failure rate, as Eric also said, you learn from these failures. Well, that didn't work. So that's a success in that method of stepping forward. So keep that in mind as you go forward.
Plus you have things for the wood stove, which is nice. You know, I think also I discovered something when we launched Watercolor Live. I had only played with watercolor a few times in my life, and I paid very close attention because I want to be able to take watercolor and plein air with watercolor at times when I don't want to carry oils. And I was watching that, and all of a sudden I started seeing techniques that certain watercolorists were doing that I'd never seen in oil. So I went back to the studio and started playing with those techniques. And all of a sudden I had one painting that just nailed it. It was just so good because I had one of those techniques. And I think the idea of just play, getting out there and not caring so much and, you know, taking chances and experimenting really can make a big difference. I think we lost Kevin.
Deborah mentioned deconstructing, and I've just started doing that recently, and I'm liking my paintings a lot better now because I'm taking a little credit card, an old credit card, or you can, these cool things that they're bowl scrapers. You can use these and get the neatest, just random texture or scraping out things that in a random way, more like humans have a tendency to be mechanical. And if we go to paint grass, we're like, you know, but when you go to deconstruct what you just painted, it gives it what Mother Nature does, more of a random look. And so I'm really enjoying deconstructing too, Deborah, a lot.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it is.
I love to go to the grocery store and the hardware store and everything else. I'm always looking and saying, how can I use that for painting? I had not seen that. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Charlie Hunter, you know, uses the squeegee.
Yes.
And
that's similar, definitely.
Yeah, but it's different. And, you know, you can make some really interesting marks with it. The thing I discovered recently is a print roller. I take a roller that's made for printmaking, and cool. I take my painting, I've done my painting, and I just start rolling over it. And, you know, it softens up edges and it changes things. I don't roll over the whole thing, and it's really very effective.
So people are asking what deconstruction is.
Okay, why don't you take that on?
So when you have painted something that you think you're proud of, it's kind of cool, like I said, to take a tool, and you can even use a paper towel and wipe a little bit, or what Eric's saying, a roller or maybe a credit card, and scrape across a passage just to deconstruct to, I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. Am I, Deborah? Help. Just to give it a freshness that we as painters, again, go in more mechanically like a robot, painting petals or the grass. And these tools help us make more random strokes.
It's very interesting how that works, because like you said, as humans and as artists, we feel like, especially as you're beginning, you're wanting to get everything so perfect. You're trying as hard as you can to get a tree and a shadow and you know, the basic things. And then you feel like, well, it still doesn't look that good. Sometimes if you just simply, you know, take your brush or a scraper or a finger or whatever, and just mess some parts up because you don't like it, then you'll go, oh, well, now I like it. You know, so it's basically, also what happens a lot of times is I think people have hard edges, and many hard edges. And so it feels so stiff. And even just a line, an edge of a boat, for instance, if you draw the whole line, it's just too stiff. So if you can just take your finger and break the line, take a brush and break any line anywhere, in, up, like that, all of a sudden there's air and there's atmosphere. And there's, you know, windows and doorways into other areas. And so it's really fun to do. So give it a try.
Kevin, any thoughts on that?
What was the question?
Never mind. Next question. So talk about edges, because you led into it. You know, when I first started painting, and probably took me 15 years of painting before somebody pointed out that, you know, my edges were bad. I never even thought about edges. I'm sure there are people out there watching who have no idea what we're talking about with edges. Can you touched on breaking up, you know, if you're painting the side of a boat or a side of a house, having that, you know, that perfectly straight edge. Although, you know, Richard Schmid taught me, and he likes to break up his edges, but he would also want to draw attention to something by having a nice crisp edge on the side of a barn or something from time to time. What are your thoughts on that, folks?
I'll take that one. A little bit about what we were talking about earlier also. Basically, edges and everything we're talking about is relationships. So we're learning to see. So we have to look at the relationships of color, how we compare them, the relationships of value, how we compare them, and the relationships of edges. So we're working with mosaics, two pieces of color that come together. So where they come together, this could be light, this could be dark, that creates a more obvious edge, you know. And then when we have different color combinations, so when we look at edges, for instance, it's a very sophisticated part of the painting process that usually after you're developing, you don't think about it for a while, but that's the one thing that's going to set your paintings up to the next level. So we look at the relationships. Zorn is a great example, or Sargent is a great example. Look at their paintings and ask yourself, where is the most crisp edge in the whole painting? So they really look at every edge, every joining of every color shape that comes together, and they have to ask themselves, how does those joining of those two shapes come together, and how do they compare to the rest? And the edges will direct attention as contrast directs attention to areas in your painting. So it's the contrast of color, contrast of value, contrast of edge. So the artist has all these things to consider as they're building their painting to help direct the person through their painting.
Awesome. Now let's talk about focal points for a second. C.W. Mundy likes to say, you put your sharpest edge, your darkest dark, your brightest bright, your most chroma color in the focal point, and then everything goes out of focus from there. Joe McGurl, on the other hand, he likes, I don't want to misquote him, but he believes that your eye darts around, and so you want everything in equal focus unless you're trying to intentionally push back the distance or something. What are your thoughts on that?
Well,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh,
Debbie.
I would agree. It just depends. Each painting has its own personality. And for me, it just is part of the design. And I'm coming from a background back in the 80s. I did a lot of illustration work, Ducks Unlimited, and I did some duck stamps and things like that, trout stamps, where everything's super hyper realistic. And talking about edges again, very hard edges, and I got really tired of it. And it's a habit that I have had to break, in fact, over the years. So now I'm doing more, probably for me personally, is I've started going back to my animals. You can see them in the background. I'm getting ready for a show in Montana. But I've really had a lot of fun breaking the edges and deciding where my focal point's going to be, and tightening up in that area. And I think edge work, it has been a really fun learning experience for me to really understand how to move the eye through a painting. And I like, who'd you say does the focus in
CW.
and then it gets, who was that?
Mundy.
Oh, that's
CW
Monday.
Monday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think
Monday.
I'm striving for that in my work right now.
Okay.
And also, Eric, you were talking about focal point. Focal point, to me, some people don't really believe in having a focal point in a painting. I think it's super ultra important, and for a lot of reasons. One is because when you're going to do a painting, you need to have an idea and a strategy and a plan. And so you see something, you go, I love those kids on the beach or whatever. Well, when you put those kids on the beach in the middle of the canvas, it's static and boring. So if you can learn design and learn how to move your focal point to certain areas, you can lead the eye into the focal point, and then everything else is just, surrounding like cast. And that's the star of the show. So I think it's really important to have a star of the show. Those edges might be somewhere where you might have a hard edge and a really strong value contrast. And everything else should be a little softer after that, because otherwise I feel like you get stressed out looking at a painting that has too many hard edges, too many things to look at. I like to be able to move around at my leisure in a painting and admire the brushwork and the depth and the thinking of the artist. So there's so
Here's a
much
bumper
to consider
sticker
there.
Painting should not cause stress.
I know. True.
Kevin, any thoughts on that focal point discussion?
Well, I think everything they said is important. Each painting has a different concept and a different reason of how you want to direct the person through your painting. Basically, I think most paintings do have a central focus, and we want to direct everything to it. So whatever takes away from moving the eye to that, we have to make considerations. So what C.W. Mundy said, if you use all your contrasts, color contrast, value contrast, you're going to direct edges. You're going to direct the person to look at the place you want them to look. And if you have chaos in your painting and you're not moving the person through that painting, then the person's going to move away from that painting and go buy CW's painting instead of my painting.
That's
All right.
exactly right. That's exactly right.
First off, I just wanted to say to everybody that we're coming up close to an hour, and I'm going to keep going if you guys will, because we have a lot to cover yet. And so you guys hang in there. And by the way, I've got a gift for everybody at the end of all of this. So not you guys, well, you can have that gift too. But, well, you're getting so highly paid for this.
Oh, sure.
Did they put more coins in the machine there and keep it going for another 50?
I hope so. I hope it doesn't cut off. All right. So let's talk about the little meaningless things that have a lot of meaning when you're out painting, the little things that we've all discovered that are just kind of silly little tips that really make our life easier. It might have to do with packing. It might have to do with painting. It might have to do with anything. Let's start with those. What are some of those things?
I'll go first. I think one of the most important things when painting outdoors is being comfortable. If you're not comfortable, you can't think and you can't relax and enjoy yourself. You can't smell the air, feel the breeze, see the color. So get comfortable, get in the shade if you can, make yourself comfortable, make sure you have your favorite gear, your favorite coffee, whatever it is. And then you can relax and then focus.
Good idea. And carry some protein with you because, if you get hungry, you start getting tired. And then you start making.
I have a counter to what Deb said, which I agree on many points. Funny, all the workshops I used to do in Dallas, I go to my friend Walt Gonski's house, who's a wonderful painter. And years ago, this is like 20, 30 years ago, he had a little willow tree that was about 4 feet high. Now it's about 40 feet high. And we would sit back and watch all my students. They would hover under that little piece of shade, that little willow tree. And so we would sit back and say, see that lady over there in the full sunlight? She's going to be a professional painter. She is forging, going through the hardships where all these other people want to be a little too comfortable. They're never going to make it. So we would laugh. And so now the tree is like 40. So
now everybody can stand under.
The whole class can get underneath there except the one.
Well, what about painting in shade? Do you guys try to intentionally paint in shade? Because I find if I paint in sunlight, my values are wrong once I bring it indoors.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't always find shade is the problem. So the one thing I've learned the hard way is to do your best to make sure that your painting is not in direct sunlight. So if you can't find shade, at least turn your painting so the sun's not shining directly on it, because like you said, Eric, you'll end up painting darker because the light is shining on it. And then when you take it into the house, it'll be so dark. So that's one thing I've learned the hard way. But yeah, I love painting in the shade if you can find shade, and I usually bring an umbrella. Yes, people are mentioning umbrellas, but then you have to deal with wind. I really think that plein air painting is a sport.
It is a sport.
and it's a really,
interestingly enough, I should mention this, that Orvis, the fly fishing company, clothing, they put a plein air painter on the cover of their February catalog.
No way.
I know, that was
they have
really
plein air
cool.
painters in the clothes they're selling inside.
Yeah, I saw that too. I was really excited, and I looked up the artist. I can't remember his name right now, but I thought that was really neat to see. But anyway, it's definitely not for the weary. It's a good workout, and I mean, yes, you can car paint out of the back of your car pretty easily and not have to walk around. But as far as making things a little bit easier, I didn't even like carrying a diaper bag when I had babies. So I do my best to minimize the gear and try and keep tubes of paint down to a minimum and brushes, and just pack light and hope you can carry everything.
I do a couple of events a year where we all go painting together for a week, and I'm not being critical of anybody, but some of these people carry their entire studio, these roller bags, 5,000 pounds. When I first went plein air painting, and I didn't even know it was called plein air painting, I took a card table, a chair, a box of stuff, a studio easel, and I set it up out on the edge of the golf course to paint the scene. I used a regular canvas, instead of a panel, and it kept blowing off because it's a sail. Those are things you learn. But now my rule is if it doesn't fit into a backpack, it doesn't go.
I like what Lori said about back when she had to carry diapers. Now that we're older, now I recommend Plein Air Pampers, so you don't have to run.
Well, I think you or I are going to be first on that list, I'm afraid. Plein Air Pampers.
That's terrible.
Okay. Let's change the subject. So let's get back to size of gear. Like Kevin likes his little teeny Pashai box. That's super cool. That's easy to carry. What? Oh, well, and I like to do that too. I can get my gear in an over-the-shoulder bag pretty easy. And if I'm climbing somewhere, I can throw it in the backpack. But I think light is easy way to go, and you can keep it really sturdy with picking up rocks from around there and putting it in a bag to keep it sturdy, and the wind's not going to bother you, but you won't have all that heavy gear to carry.
I'm not endorsing anybody, but I've got so many different Pashad boxes and I love them all for different reasons, but these are two of my smallest ones. And it's fun to have like a little grab and go bag where you'll be more likely to get out there and paint if you just have a bag ready to go and you don't have to try and gather up your gear every single time.
I try to keep one in the car, and the other thing is don't borrow paint from your plein air kit for your studio, or don't borrow brushes or other things for your plein air kit, because you'll end up by the river like I did with no brushes or no paint.
Well, and then I love, of course, water mixable oils, and I paint with Cobra, and I paint with them all the time and in the studio as well. And I really enjoy them, especially for travel and plein air painting, because you don't need to worry about solvents.
Okay.
So you can use water. In fact, when I'm painting and I travel around the world painting, I usually try and dip into maybe the river that I'm painting near and infuse a little bit of that place in my work.
Get a little sand in your paint.
Get a little bit of sand, yeah.
All right. And anybody wearing gloves when you paint?
Yeah, I do. I started doing that more. I don't like to at all, but I use cadmiums, even though for the most part with being solvent free, that's great, but I still like the cads, and they're not good to get on your cuticle or underneath your fingernails. So I am doing my best to wear gloves, even though I don't love it.
Yeah, by the way,
gloves.
Painters should get, if you're painting with heavy metals or leads, you should get, every time you have an exam, you should get a lead test when your blood test. Just an FYI. Kevin, what about you? Any other tips?
Well, with the gloves, years ago, I think I was a little too haphazard with all the mineral spirits and turpentine and the stuff. And so I got really sick. And I think, actually, I would smell my skin and it would smell like,
oh, wow,
toxins and turpentine. So it really kind of messed up my health for quite a while. So I'm a little bit more careful, but actually the little plein air live painting I just did in the snow 3 days ago, I had all my winter gear on, and I was so covered with paint. My good skiing gloves are all covered with paint. So, it's kind of a mess when you're doing it, but so do be a little careful when you're out there painting.
Yeah, I think if you're outdoors and you're using solvents, that's less of a problem. But Ulrich Gleiter, the German painter who lives in Russia, I got into his car because he pours terps on when he paints. And I got into the car and my eyes started watering. I literally put my head out the window and I said, you're going to die. You've got to stop all this. But, nobody ever thinks they're going to get sick.
How did you detox? Kevin, I'm curious how you detoxed from that.
A lot of whiskey.
It was a long period, almost like 5 years, 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was quite miserable.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I'm glad
and
you did better.
They say that in the studio, just an open window isn't enough. You need almost a industrial strength, kitchen air thing sucking out, turning out the air in the studio every 10 minutes or something.
That's
Let's talk
one more thought real
Yeah.
quick, Eric, and that is about your terp jar. If you're working with oils, people don't realize that it's sitting right underneath their nose while they're painting in the studio and out on location. And if you just put the lid back on for the most of the time, wherever you are, you know what I mean? Because it's so
Good
funny.
idea.
I just realized that, oh my gosh, that's right under where I'm breathing. I can't smell it. Can't smell it. So just keep the lid on that thing.
Okay, now this is a very important question.
Okay.
Do you drink your mineral spirits?
No.
We all had our students do that at least once or twice.
All right. So let's move into travel tips. And then we're going to wrap things up. I'll give everybody their gift before we leave. I get a lot of questions about traveling with oil paints, and I'll tell you a quick story. I flew over to Russia with my paints. I had a guide showing me around and translating, and then I wanted to go to the art store. So she's like, okay, see you, bye. And I'm stuck with this driver who didn't speak any English. And I'm trying to tell him how to get to an art store, but we didn't have any Google or anything at the time. And so finally he figures out art store after we talked for 45 minutes, and he takes me to this little place, a little dark building, and they got a little counter and these little men in their aprons, and everything is behind the counter. And I like, well, I need some mineral spirits. What, they don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, I couldn't find any mineral spirits, and I ended up having to paint without them, which was probably not a good idea. That's when I discovered Cobra water mixable oils, which are great for travel, or watercolors, or pastel. But what are some of the travel tips?
Okay, speaking of turpentine and traveling and even at home, you really don't have to have Gamsol or terpenoid or turpentine. You can use oil, like vegetable oil. Any kind of oil works beautifully, and the brushes love it. So really, that's a really great inside secret. So if you're
Doesn't it
traveling,
make things a little too slippery?
Yeah.
If you use walnut oil, by the way, you got to be careful if you have a nut allergy.
Okay, but I would not use it, Eric, in my paint. I would only use it to clean my brushes,
Only to
because
clean
I'm
your
not
brush.
a big proponent of any kind of medium, because they always kill me. I can never handle them, so I don't use any medium when I actually paint. But to clean your brushes, that's all you really need is to get those clean. You can use oil,
Okay. Kevin?
vegetable oil.
Yeah, I think that's great what Deb said. Actually using some walnut oil or any type of oil instead of it. And then to clean, you could use baby oil also. So you could do it solvent free. And then doing the watercolor, when I travel to all the different type of places, I start doing watercolor or gouache or acrylic, to make it a little easier for some of the travel things. So, the smell of the turpentine or the Gamsol, is really bad sometimes when you're traveling. So there's lots of ways you can do it without that. And some of my students I've been with sometimes just use a palette knife and the paint quite pure, and that works great too.
Lori?
Well, I of course use water, and the times that is difficult is when it's below freezing, which oftentimes I'm out there when it's below 32 degrees and the water will freeze. So I use the mediums then.
Vodka.
I asked them if I could use some kind of alcohol of sorts, and they said that would not be good for the paint. So
well, in Russia, my friends over there told me that they do in their painting in the winter, they put vodka into their white because it tends to get thick. And
I remember you told
quickly.
me that, and I asked Kyle, and he said, no, you shouldn't do that. So anyway, so I haven't tried that, but I use
you have
the mediums.
One swig and then you mix it in.
I don't think that would do very well by me. But anyway, and what was the question then?
Oh, just any travel tips,
any travel tips. So
people are asking, like, how do you travel with wet panels? How do you get, do you check your easel? What do you do?
a travel tip is you guys have always given these little stickers away, and I really do use them so that you can put your name and number if you're flying. And it also tells the airline inspectors that, you know, these are not combustible. And so, and when I fly, I usually carry on my brushes because sometimes your luggage will get lost, and brushes are really valuable. So I like having those with me. What other travel? Oh, I know for wet panels, like what to do. You can take wine corks. If you don't want to bring panel carriers, you can take wine corks. Have you guys tried this where you slice them into little penny sized slices, and you put them in the corners of your paintings and put them face to face, and then use blue painter's tape or saran wrap, and even though they're wet, you can get them home safely. And that's a really streamlined little tip to use.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Very cool.
I have had, I've had 2 or 3 easels broken checking them in the airlines, and mostly it was the glass pallets. And so I got away from that finally, but I always carry 2 easels. And I have I went over to one of these discount stores and bought the cheapest, lightest weight, hard shell suitcase I could find. And I put everything in that suitcase, right? So I have my main easel, and then I have that little tiny bitty pochade box. And then I have, you know, everything I might need. You know, I don't carry it when I paint, but I have it in the back of the car, including my boots and my winter gear in case, you know, there's all of a sudden winter. And that's very handy. But I check everything now, 100%. You know, I actually have my backpack inside that suitcase. I check that. And once in a while, I have had stories where people tell me that they've lost their stuff. I've had palette knives confiscated. I've had razor knives confiscated, even though they're checked. Those things have gone away sometimes.
Yeah, they do go through your things. So I don't like that. I've missed things along the way as well.
Okay.
I see people asking about what is a pochade box. So a pochade box is simply a folding easel. I have one behind me. I'll take it apart and show you in a minute. But an easel that can fold into, there's many of them, different brands out there, fold into a little box. And that way you can take it right off of your quick release for your tripod, and you can put it in a bag or a backpack. You can pack
one Lori is showing is a new wave, and it's a small one. And that's the small one, small extra one I carry. And then there's lots of others that,
and then like, here's another kind.
Right.
So.
And Deborah has one back there.
I know I have one.
I typically don't endorse any particular brand because I'll get yelled at.
Yeah.
So, very nice.
Oh, yeah, those are pretty. Those are like a laptop. Those are really cool.
Yeah.
And you can check your email while you're painting, which is always nice. All right. Well, you know, Kevin, any final thoughts on travel tips?
No, I think the main thing when you're coming back, make sure you just bring all your paintings on the plane with you. You know, I check everything in too. And then as Lori said, using the corks, there's also things you can put on the backs of, sometimes you go to a framer shop, they have these little bubbles, sticky bubbles you put on the back of a frame painting.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And those work really good to kind of do the same thing you said as the wine corks. But the wine corks give you a good idea while you're traveling. Drink a lot of wine, get a lot of corks, and ready when you're coming
Save
back.
your corks. Yeah, I probably have a lot of corks.
Bring your paintings with you on the plane. Other than that, just check things in.
Yeah, and there are panel carriers that, you know, some are made out of lightweight materials, some are made out of wood. Some will hold 4 or 6 panels, some will hold 20. So it just depends. I have a friend who he never puts anything, he doesn't paint on panels. He has one panel with Velcro on it, and then he puts the Velcro dots on the back of the painting. He sticks it on, does the painting, and then he takes them off. He has a big sheet of flannel that he puts on his shower curtain, and he sticks the paintings to the shower curtain to dry for the week. And then he just stacks them all up, puts them in a little notebook, and that's how he gets them home. I'm not quite that organized. Well, I want to thank, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in a couple more tool ideas.
Okay.
Toothpicks and Q-tips are really neat for different effects and kind of scraping in. And one of these, don't take this on a plane though, but a little paint scraper for your palette.
They make them in nylon, by the way.
Yeah, they do. You're right. And then a viewfinder, because it's super overwhelming when you're outside. And of course, we have our cell phones that work really well for that as well. But this one's really cool. I think the view catcher, but it has little marks where it's like an 8x10 or 9x12 or 6x8. And you can look through this, and it's gray, so you can judge your values. And then this is I can't remember what these are called, but it's like a value. And I don't know. The jury's out.
Nobody uses those. They all use value specs
if I like
now.
this thing or not.
That's old school stuff.
But anyway, those are kind of fun things to think about adding to your bag of tricks.
Yep. You can carry so much stuff too. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hello, Belfast, Ireland, by the way. Well, I want to thank all of you. We could probably do this for 3 hours. There's so much stuff. And when we're together as artists, we talk about these things, which is really wonderful. Lori McNeil, start with you. Anything you want to promote or tell us about real quick, and your social media handle?
Oh, well, I'm painting for some shows right now. My next show will be up in Montana at Dana Gallery in April. So I'm painting a large show that's a lot of animals. It's interesting going back full circle.
Instagram handle?
Oh, my handle's Lori McNee Artist on Instagram and Twitter, and my website, lorimcnee.com. And I'm all over the internet, and I'd love to hear from you all after this. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on Instagram, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Deborah.
Oh, thank you, Eric. I do want to tell everybody about, and I have a new video released through Streamline, which is fabulous. Streamline Art Video. It's a new video release called Impressionism, and it's me working on a very large regatta painting, and I actually worked on it here in the gallery. And they filmed us out on our boat and at the, all over the harbor. So there's a lot of interesting facts, but also take something very complicated and break it down to simple. So I'm excited that that's released. That just released, right?
And it reminds me of an Edgar Payne painting. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
And yeah, that's just releasing tomorrow, actually. And there's a 3 p.m. broadcast tomorrow where we're going to play a sample of it. And then also they can find it at painttube.tv. That's the new name of the business.
And
all right.
I had
and
an
your
idea
handle?
if I'm at Deborah Hughes Art, but I'd love it if people would go to deborahhughes.com. I'm putting together all of my gear, and then a little thing that points to everything that shows exactly what it is that I can email to everybody. So I thought it would be fun to have a little guide like that, so they can go check that out on my website and maybe sneak in my paint real quick.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Deborah has 3 incredible colors that save a lot of time. I use them. They're in my palette, and they should be in yours too. They're called
and I've got my set too.
Oh, you do? What is it?
This is Cobra. This
Cobra
is
set.
Cobra from different than Deb's. If you're interested in going solvent free, water mixable, you can check those out.
Awesome. Awesome. I want to remind everybody before we say goodbye to Kevin that I've got a gift for you. Don't leave. Kevin, final thoughts?
I feel bad. I don't have any of my products in front of me except Plein Air Pamper.
Plein Air Pampers from Kevin McPherson.
Yeah.
What about your Plein Air
I
vodka?
get 2 free, and they're extra protection. But actually, Eric and we did a great video called The Magic Grid, which I'm very proud of because it was really thorough and it's been doing well, and it really puts things in a different way of thinking. And then I have a show coming up in Charleston, South Carolina, April 1st and March 31st. So I'm going to be there and have just some display of some little paintings and stuff. So
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to doing both of those things. And
Where do we find you on social media?
I think by name, I'm not quite sure how well. I'm not really good at the
Just
computer
Google
stuff.
Kevin McPherson, you'll find him.
Yeah, and I
And then-
appreciate my wife, who's in Mexico right now. I'm amazed I did this without having her fixing the computers and the iPads and things like that. But I want to thank, it was a pleasure to be with Deb and Lori and Eric. I appreciate you doing it. And this is a really nice thing to let a lot of people who want to start painting, who have painted for a long time, just get some feedback from some of us who've been doing it. So I appreciate what you're doing, Eric. You've been doing a great job. And
Yes.
thank you, Kevin.
Yeah,
Kevin's
thank you.
on Plein Air Live in March. Lori McNee, you're on Plein Air Live and you're on Plein Air Convention.
Yes.
Well, Kevin's doing a workshop at Plein Air Convention the day before, which everybody should go to.
Oh, that's right. That's wonderful.
And he's also going to be on stage. Deborah, you're going to be Plein Air
Santa
Convention.
Fe. Yeah.
Santa Fe. All right, great. Well, thank
Yay,
you all.
we'll all be back together again.
All right. Well, thanks again to our special guests, Deborah Hughes, Kevin McPherson, and Lori McNee. You can see their websites up on the screen. If you're listening to this and you can't see the screen, DeborahHughes.com, KevinMcPherson.com, and LoriMcNee.com. All right. Now it's time for some marketing.
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhodes, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
All right. So in the Marketing Minute, I try to answer your art marketing questions because so many artists want to either learn how to sell their art or get better at it. Whether you're already doing it or you're doing it, are you wanting to do it? That's what I'm here for. Now, I teach art marketing on stage at the Plein Air Convention every year. It's 3 mornings. It's early in the morning. We have a packed crowd. And I hope you'll join us for that. I also have some videos that you can check out at painttube.tv. But I really want you to embrace this idea of marketing. And really, we're all marketing in some fashion. Even if you're not selling your paintings, you're trying to get maybe a little local publicity or something. So that's what the Marketing Minute is for. So Amadine, why don't you read the first question for us?
Yes, so the first question is from Suzanne from Long Island. With all the online art classes now, is the plein air market oversaturated for artists and teachers?
Well, I think the answer to that is you're never oversaturated, never, ever, ever, ever. There's a lot of different issues in this. There's lots of opportunities to learn. And when COVID hit, a lot of instructors decided to go online to teach. And so you still have the opportunity. You can go to watch what they're doing, or you still have the opportunity to do it. But quite frankly, a lot of people are unwinding that now, right? Because COVID is, depending on where you are, is over, almost over. Here in Texas, we just don't have much of it going on anymore. And as a result, people who are teaching online are kind of getting away from that now because they're all anxious to teach in person again. Some of them will continue it, but that's, it's not oversaturated. Secondly, we always have to give our customers what they want. And we have to listen to our customers. We have to survey our customers. We want to find out what it is they want. If your clients are moving to online training, then you probably need to consider doing it. A lot of artists come to people like us and we produce art instruction videos, and that's a way to scratch that itch for them. Because here's the thing. If you're an artist, this is something I heard more than anything during COVID. I heard, I can't use names, but one artist said, I started doing this online teaching and I hate it. I've had to figure out all the technology. I'm spending all my time dealing with cameras and technology, and I'm answering emails, and I'm just, it's become 2 full-time jobs and I don't have time to paint anymore. One of the reasons people come to us when they want to produce an art instruction video, first off, we have Hollywood quality level, which just nobody can touch. And, we do it in a sound stage, we do it right. But, the artists look at this and they say, if I do my own thing, now all of a sudden I'm not an artist anymore. I'm editing video. I am answering customer service questions. I'm dealing with shipping things in some cases. There's a lot of interaction and interplay. We had one artist came to us. He said, I did my own video And he said, even though I made a little bit of money on it, he said, when I calculated how much money I made per hour, it was like $2 an hour. And he said, I'm getting emails all the time and I'm dealing with it. And it's just, which I don't want to deal with the customer service issues. So you have to decide, is it really important to you to do this? Is it something your customers need? And do I really want to put my art career on hold to do this? I think, of course I think this, but the idea is that you want to make sure that you're the best artist you can be and focus on your art, your painting, your sculpting, whatever it happens to be the best you can. People who succeed really figure out how to do the things that are important for making themselves successful, and they let everybody else do the other things. Now, let me give you an example of that. Right? I wrote a book on art marketing a couple of years ago, and I spent a tremendous amount of time on it. It took me away from my job. And, I'm writing and I am editing and I'm just constantly doing all this stuff with it. And now I've since learned, I'm working on another book now, and I've since learned a more efficient way to do that, where I have other people who will gather all the information for me. I'll hire freelancers to do this. They'll go through videos that I've created since and get them transcribed and get things changed. And then, they'll put it into book form for me. And then I'll look at it and make some changes. Then it's going to save me hundreds and hundreds of hours. You need to be focusing on the things that are going to generate the most for you long term. If you want to be known as a teacher, that's great. If you want to be known as an online teacher, that's great. If you want to be known as an artist and get your work to the level where you're getting purchased by museums and major collectors, that's where you need to put your focus. And when you have distraction, you want to watch out for that distraction. So everything matters, right? So anyway, the other thing to keep in mind, and I know this is rambly, so I'll just try to be short about it, but no matter how much competition is out there, you want to look for ways to differentiate yourself from competition. What do I do differently? How am I different? What is my offering? But also the reality is that no matter how much competition you have, you can out promote your competition. Now, sometimes it takes money to out promote your competition. I promote very heavily. I spend a lot of money on promotion, but sometimes it's just a matter of being more creative. There's a lot of people who are doing all these classes and online stuff, and they're getting 5 or 10 people to sign up with them. And I know people are getting, a couple hundred while they're out promoting everybody. So that's what it takes. Now, Amadine, what's our next question?
Our next question is from Garrick from Portland. Prints. I think you would say they're a good idea, but do they require an entirely separate marketing approach to original works? Do they discourage purchases of originals or encourage upsells? Should I offer limited edition prints or sell as many as you can get away with?
All right. So the first thing that I heard when I got into the art world about, seriously, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I started painting, maybe a little more than that. The first thing I heard is that prints are bad. Artists who are serious should never do prints. They're going to detract from your originals and so on. I got to tell you that some of the most successful artists on earth, when I say successful, in this case, I'm talking about financially successful, but also embraced by the major shows and selling artworks for big money. One that I'm thinking of, no names, one that I'm thinking of sells his originals for over $1 million and is still selling originals. Now he's getting old. He's not going to be able to do originals much anymore, but he has an entire print business. I was just visiting another artist who has a huge print business, and he's gotten to the point where he's not making many originals anymore because he's getting older and he doesn't have the energy to paint. But his print business is thriving. And so there's a lot of ways that you can do print business. I have a friend who uses a licensing firm, and they're a company that makes prints and they sell them. they have salespeople who go out to galleries and they say, okay, do you want this person's or that person's? They have a whole catalog. And, there's signed limited edition prints in some cases, but also, I got even just this morning in the mail, he sent me a calendar and his images are all over the calendar. Somebody's paying a licensing fee for that. So there's a lot of things that you can do to license your work. Now, the minute you start selling prints direct, that's a whole different animal, right? If you can get somebody else to sell them for you, I like the philosophy of somebody working for me when I'm sleeping, right? Your focus should be on making great art. If you're trying to figure out how to sell prints, find somebody to sell them for you and handle that. Now, if you're somebody who goes to art shows like tent shows where you're in person, people sometimes don't buy originals because they don't like it that much, or maybe they like it, they just don't want to spend that much. And unlikely that the person who's going to buy a print is not going to say, well, I don't think that person's going to say, well, I'm not going to buy that $3,000 painting on the wall because I can buy a print for $50. I think they're going to be a $50 print person. And if you, in that art show, you sell 200 art prints at $50, you've had a pretty good day. You've covered your expenses, but you're going to have to, you got to get them printed up and mounted and put into plastine and so on. And so you've got that to deal with. But I think, keep prints to limited editions, signed and numbered if you possibly can, unless you've got somebody who can take this to the next level for you and license you. Also, you can sell through the cruise companies. People haven't been going on cruises much lately, but that's starting to change. So they have people who sell original artworks on the cruise companies, and they get a lot of money for them sometimes. And sometimes they sell prints, and they get a lot of money for those because they're limited editions. And then also, you have people who specifically sell to hotels and people, and retailers that buy prints and things like that. So it takes a little homework, but if you do your homework, you can Google this and find out people who represent, selling prints to hotels and so on. Then you can contact them, say, hey, look at my work. Would you be willing to do something with me? Some will, some won't. They might like it, they might not. Anyway, always study who's succeeding at something. You don't get smart by looking at the people who are failing. You get smart by looking at the people who are succeeding. If I like to read biographies on famous people, famous artists, you look at people like Wyeth. I mean, Wyeth was a brilliant artist, but he was also a brilliant marketer. I mean, you read the stories, and especially his wife, Betsy, she was a great marketer. And so what a great team. And they did a lot of things to build up career. Now, marketing is not just advertising. Marketing might be press releases, it might be shows, it might be books. There's a lot of different things. And so look at all of those things. Anyway, that's the Marketing Minute.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhodes. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
Well, don't forget that you need to subscribe to Plein Air Magazine. If you're listening to this, you can get the digital. If you're out of the country, you can still get the print, but it takes a little while to get there depending on where you are. But you should really consider Plein Air Magazine. So just go to pleinairmagazine.com. It's a beautiful magazine, by the way. We won a National Design Award, which was pretty cool. Anyway, and we're just actually getting ready to do some more changes in design. All right. Also, reminder to enter a painting in the Plein Air Salon at pleinairsalon.com. You could win $15,000. And last but not least, I hope you'll join me next week if you're listening to this live or when it's current. Anyway, make sure that you sign up for Plein Air Live. It's got 30 plus artists, top artists, and I guarantee it, if you watch the first day and it doesn't blow you away, and it's live. I mean, we're interacting. It's not just like watching television. You're watching demos. We've got some things that are live, some things that are pre-recorded. I'm there live. We have breakout rooms where you meet other people. And I was watching on Facebook the other day, and two people met on Plein Air Live in a breakout room. And then they're going painting together because they found out they live near each other. So things like that happen. Then we do a paint out together at night every night. We have Beginner's Day on Wednesday the 9th. And that's also a refresher for those of us. And there's a set of teachers that are not teaching the rest of it. So that's good. And then there's the 3-day event Plein Air Live. So you can sign up for one or both, and we'd love to have you. And it's never too late. So go to pleinairlive.com. Well, that's about it I've got. If you've not seen my blog, it's on Sunday mornings, and it's called Sunday Coffee. And you can find it at coffeewitheric.com. Also, I want to mention to you that I'm on Facebook daily, on Facebook and YouTube live at 12 noon daily weekdays. And my show is called Art School Live. And I have had hundreds, literally hundreds of artist demonstrations, talks, marketing talks, noon Eastern time, every weekday. And you can subscribe on YouTube by searching Streamline Art, and hit that subscribe button and the notification button. And also, please follow me. If you haven't, follow me on Instagram. How many of you, raise your hand? No, not if you're driving. Raise your hand if you're on Instagram. Now, with 1.5 million downloads, if you guys would do me a favor and just right now go to Instagram and find Eric Rhodes. It's got an A in it, no E in it. Eric Rhodes, find that on Instagram and hit the follow button. You would be doing me a big favor, and then I get to follow you back. It's pretty cool. All right. Well, I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Arts Connoisseur and Plein Air Magazine. Thank you so much for joining me today. Remember, it's a great big world out there. Go paint it. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhodes. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.